Hello, welcome to Sophie & Co. I'm Sophie Shebert. Now, while sanction threats against Russia send ripples of panic across the world of investment, there are still those who remain unfazed by the political turmoil. How big is the risk of putting your trust in the Russian market? And how long until the anxiety blows over? Well, we ask the man who knows all about following the money. Renowned investor Jim Rogers is our guest today.
With the West pushing Russia further away, Moscow securing a historic pivot to Asia. Having signed hundreds of billions of dollars worth of deals, Russia and China are closer than ever before. Should the West be worried? Did it fail in its proclaimed mission of isolating Russia? And are all the sanction threats just undermining trust in the dollar?
Jim Rogers, renowned investor, businessman, and author, welcome to the program. Great to have you with us. We're going to start with the sanctions. The West is busy with them, coming up with a new round for Russia. But Russia, meanwhile, has made a historic 30-year gas deal with China. How painful do you think the consequences could be for Europe and the United States?
Well, I will have to say, Washington seems to be making one mistake after another, and I don't like saying it, since I'm an American citizen, but, you know, America's driving Russia and China together. America's driving Russia more and more to Asia. That cannot be good for America, but they keep making mistakes in Washington.
So you're saying U.S. and Europe unwillingly pushed Russia and China together?
Well, unfortunately, America seems to really bungle this whole thing very badly. As you know, they tried to do their best to instigate a coup in Ukraine against an elected government. They did that somewhat successfully, but then they didn't think through the consequences. Mr. Putin seems to have outsmarted us. Putin now controls Crimea, which the Russians have controlled for many decades, so that's not so unusual. What's unusual is that America didn't think through what they were doing. They seem to just react on a day-to-day basis. So now Crimea is part of Russia. The Russians have more and more allies in Asia. I'm afraid America just didn't think it through. They bungled. They acted on a day-to-day basis. They reacted to events instead of looking to the future and controlling events. Mr. Putin seems to have outsmarted Mr. Obama.
You have called U.S. actions in regards to Ukraine another embarrassment for the U.S. foreign policy. So why? And why do you think U.S. got involved in the first place?
That's an extremely good question. Why did they get involved in the first place? Because we have incompetence in the State Department in Washington. I guess they thought that they could control Ukraine, which would give America more influence in Central Europe and would certainly damage Russia. But in the end, it seems to have strengthened Russia and has damaged America. Politicians make mistakes. Bureaucrats make mistakes all the time. Looks like this time it was America that made the mistakes and not Russia.
But if you're saying that the whole Ukrainian affair is a geopolitical failure for America, why do you think it will also hurt the U.S. economy? Where does the economy come in?
Well, I didn't say it was going to hurt the U.S. economy, not anytime soon. But if Russia now does more and more trade with Asia instead of with Europe and instead of with the West, then obviously that's good for Russia, it's good for Asia, but America gets cut out and Europe gets cut out. You know, Russia used to sell a lot of gas to Europe, it still does, but if they stop selling gas to Europe, natural gas to Europe, and sell it to Asia, that is not good for Europe and ultimately not good for the U.S. either, because the U.S. and Europe are huge trading partners.
George Soros proposed opening up U.S. strategic oil reserves to drive the prices down in an effort to hurt Russian economy. Now, is that feasible? Is punishing Russia worth tapping into those reserves?
Well, America does have oil reserves, but they're not enough to, if we sold all of our oil reserves, it's not enough to have any kind of significant effect on the world oil market. It might make the market go down for a day or a week or 2 weeks even, but then the market's going to go back before, and the market would even go back more, because then America would have sold its oil reserves, and we wouldn't have anything in reserve. So, again, you'll have to ask him. I don't know, but that doesn't seem like a very viable solution to me.
But once again, in your opinion, if Russian gas is sent flowing eastward to China and there's trade trouble with Russian gas in Europe, will the United States be able to fill the gap?
No, I mean, America says it could, but it would take a long time for America, to get gas, natural gas from America to Europe. You don't just sort of snap your fingers and do that. You don't just put it on a boat or a plane. You've got to have special ports on both sides. You've got to have special ships. You've got to have the natural gas in the right place. No, yeah, it could happen someday, but someday is a long time away. And if Russia stops selling natural gas to Europe, that's going to hurt Europe for several years until American gas can come. And that presumes and supposes that there is enough American gas, natural gas, to ship to Europe. Europe uses a lot of natural gas, and America at the moment seems to have a surplus of natural gas. Will they have a surplus in 5 years? I don't know. Will they have enough to supply Europe with gas for many years? I doubt it.
Now, I don't know if you know that the European Union has begun sending financial aid to Ukraine. Do you think Ukraine will ever be able to pay that money back?
Pay it back to the European Union? No,
Yep.
I doubt it very seriously. They're going to have to take that money to pay Russia for the natural gas. No, I think this will be just a form of foreign aid from Europe to Ukraine if they do it. I don't see how Ukraine can ever pay the money back.
Now, as an investor, what economic benefits are there for EU and United States? What are they expecting out of this whole affair? I mean, how do you attract investors to the country when there is civil war raging between East and the West?
Sophie, you're asking an extremely good question. I don't see what was in it for Europe and the U.S. other than some kind of geopolitical game that bureaucrats and politicians like to play. I don't see what the purpose of this was other than some kind of supposed chess game. I don't see what America expected to get out of it. Ukraine has a lot of agriculture, but other than that, I mean, those agricultural products get sold onto the world market. So I don't see why America tried to get so involved with Ukraine. It just does not make any sense to me. And as I said earlier, it seems to be hurting America now rather than helping America, since the consequences have not gone the way they thought they would.
But do you think the West has failed to isolate Russia politically and economically, or is the West going to end up isolating Russia at the end?
I don't see that it's hurt Russia. Maybe there's something I don't know, but I don't see that this has hurt Russia in any way at this point.
What does all of this mean for the dollar? I mean, last week, Russia's economy minister told me that ruble and other national currencies will be used for trade to diversify risk. So where does that leave dollar?
Well, again, I don't particularly like saying any of this because I'm an American citizen and an American taxpayer, an American voter. But if you drive people away from the dollar, many people now must be sitting there saying, gosh, if we have U.S. dollars and the U.S. decides they don't like us, they're going to put sanctions on us. So people, more and more people will say, maybe I shouldn't use the U.S. dollar. Maybe I shouldn't have my money in U.S. dollars. At the same time, as you know, Russia and China are now going to trade with each other in their own currencies instead of the U.S. dollar. More and more people are doing the same thing. They're starting to trade in other currencies besides the U.S. dollar. This is just a continuing long-term move away from the U.S. dollar. And I'm afraid that the U.S. is pushing people away from the U.S. dollar with our actions.
So if you're saying that other players will move away from the dollar eventually, where does that leave the American economy?
Well, the U.S. has been the world's reserve currency, has had the world's medium of exchange, and so far we've been able to do a lot of things because we can just print more U.S. dollars. You know, we have a huge balance of trade deficit. We have huge government deficits because we can print more money. If there comes a time when we cannot print money, when the world will not just take U.S. dollars because we say, here they are, then that cripples America in many, many ways. The Pentagon, the Defense Department in the U.S., has already said that the deficit in the U.S. is a major potential weakness from the military point of view. Just recently, the space people said, you know, every country in the world has eventually collapsed, and the way America's going, we might collapse too. This is not me. This is the Defense Department in America, and this is the Space Agency in America saying these things. But if you read history, Sophie, it's true. It's correct. That when people do not have the money that they used to have, they're limited in many ways. You cannot have as many soldiers. You cannot have as many airplanes. You cannot send ships all over the world because somebody has to pay for it. And if you don't have the money to pay for it anymore, you're in trouble.
All right, Jim, we're going to take a short break right now, folks. We will be back with financial guru Jim Rogers to talk pros and cons of investing in Russia right now, so stay with us. Back with Jim Rogers, famous investor and businessman. So, Jim, you are known to invest in places where others will not dare to, and right now you seem to be putting your trust in Russia. Well, why now, when all the instability in Ukraine is causing the ruble to fall and investors are extremely scared and cautious?
Well, there's been a long-term adage in the investment world that you buy when there's disaster, because if you buy when everybody else is panicking and dumping, you're probably going to make a lot of money in the end, unless the world comes to an end. I don't suspect that Russia's going to come to an end. Russia has huge assets. Russia has lots of foreign currency in reserves as well. So when I saw Russia collapsing, I thought I should buy, and I did buy. I have been becoming more optimistic about Russia over the past year or two anyway.
Hello, welcome to Sophie & Co. I'm Sophie Shebert. Now, while sanction threats against Russia send ripples of panic across the world of investment, there are still those who remain unfazed by the political turmoil. How big is the risk of putting your trust in the Russian market? And how long until the anxiety blows over? Well, we ask the man who knows all about following the money. Renowned investor Jim Rogers is our guest today.
With the West pushing Russia further away, Moscow securing a historic pivot to Asia. Having signed hundreds of billions of dollars worth of deals, Russia and China are closer than ever before. Should the West be worried? Did it fail in its proclaimed mission of isolating Russia? And are all the sanction threats just undermining trust in the dollar?
Jim Rogers, renowned investor, businessman, and author, welcome to the program. Great to have you with us. We're going to start with the sanctions. The West is busy with them, coming up with a new round for Russia. But Russia, meanwhile, has made a historic 30-year gas deal with China. How painful do you think the consequences